Hello, friends. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. Today is May 15th, Thursday. I'd like to share the most important news so far, as everything changes every minute. The composition of the Russian delegation to the Istanbul peace talks has sparked outrage in Ukraine and globally. Zelenskyy almost skipped the trip to Turkey but was convinced to attend. Trump is obviously giving Putin one last chance that the dictator will not take. What will happen next? Let's talk about it and analyze it. Before we start, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to YouTube 24. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is in the description. Don't forget to like it, right where you are watching from, your comments, wishes, questions, emotions. Please leave a feedback, and in this way we are promoting Ukrainian language YouTube and our pro-Ukrainian position in a very important way. The Russian delegation's departure began not with civilian aviation attacks, but with a nighttime strike using 110 Shahed drones and imitation UAVs on May 15th. Our Air Force reports that it has shot down 62 Shaheeds and 29 enemy imitator drones, which were destroyed or lost in the area. The enemy attack affected Sumy, Dnipro, Poltava, Kyiv, and Ivano-Frankivsk regions. We understand that this is how the Russians are preparing for negotiations and a possible ceasefire, so you understand everything perfectly well. And who did Putin approve? Last night, the dictator signed a decree on the composition of Russia's delegation for talks with Ukraine and Turkey, published on the Kremlin's website. Medinsky, former Minister of Culture and now Putin's aide with little influence, was also part of the March 2022 delegation in Istanbul. Galuzin, Lavrov's deputy, isn't the top figure. Kostyukov, head of the main intelligence directorate, is key but not a political player. Fomin, deputy defense minister, is also in the delegation. He is also far from influential in the Kremlin. Apparently, Russia is seeking to continue negotiations on the war waged against Ukraine from the very place where they were disrupted or ended in 2022. This was reported by the Financial Times, and this delegation is indeed a slap in the face, both for Trump personally and for Europeans and Ukraine. Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tena called the composition of the Russian delegation in Istanbul a slap in the face for Ukraine and the world, ahead of the second day of NATO foreign ministers' meetings in Turkey. Our Foreign Minister Sibiga has already met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Chakna emphasizes that the focus is on Ukraine and peace in Ukraine. Chakna says Putin is not taking the opportunity for peace seriously, sending an ultranationalist with no real political influence to the talks instead. The minister said, "This is a slap in the face for Ukraine and all of us. Putin doesn't take this opportunity seriously, so we must continue supporting Ukraine." This should be the reason for the U.S. and Europe to apply pressure, as French Foreign Minister Barrot said yesterday, to take Putin by the throat. Well, judge for yourself. Everyone expected Lavrov and Ushakov to attend these talks. As for Putin, his participation was questionable, and the Kremlin is officially lowering the level of representation even further, thus demonstrating that we don't care about your attempts to end the war. They don't care that people are dying. They don't care that the whole of Ukraine is on fire. The Russians are only imitating the negotiation process. Trump's reaction is crucial. He and the Europeans agreed to delay pressure for new sanctions until May 12th, after Putin abandoned the 30-day ceasefire. Let's wait for the meeting in Istanbul. Maybe something will change there. Maybe Putin will come and talk. But no, we see that Putin sends representatives without a mandate who cannot decide or propose anything. This is a very low technical level and actually a breakdown of the negotiation process. And Trump must realize this. Yet he says he has dew in his eyes. After all, here is his statement today. He is ready to arrive in Istanbul tomorrow on Friday to participate in the talks on Ukraine. Trump added that Putin didn't attend because, as he said, "Why should I go if he's not coming?" Trump said he considered going, but it's difficult due to current events. However, if things change, he might go on Friday if it's appropriate. He then repeated his previous statements. This must stop. It's not just about money. We spent $350 billion and gave it away without knowing where it went. They just send them a check, no reporting, nothing. They just give them money. Every time it's like that. Every time he, i.e. Zelenskyy, came, he was told that it was profitable. I think he may be the biggest seller in history. Every time he has come to the United States, he has walked away with $100 billion. That's a good seller, even by your rather high standards. I'm just quoting Trump. You know how he speaks, a little bit confusingly, but the point is clear. We see that the very person who should logically support Ukraine and put pressure on Putin with sanctions did not do so. Let me remind you that on Monday, he refused to call a ceasefire, even though the United States also demanded it. Special Representative Kit Kylo also said that a ceasefire should be established first, and only then should he make a statement. Putin has not fulfilled this condition. It would seem that he was given a chance to come today or tomorrow, and what does Trump say? That Zelenskyy is a salesman. That is, he is repeating his rhetoric. Putin's scenario is further realized by the words, hands and actions of Donald Trump, or rather his inaction. This is exactly what Putin wants, to imitate the negotiation process in order to continue his offensive and attacks. And Trump is doing nothing about it because it's so profitable for him. He believes that there is no other way to end this war. He doesn't care where Ukraine's borders are, as Kurt Walker said. His main goal is to present himself as a peacemaker. The public now knows which Ukrainian delegation besides Zelenskyy will go to Turkey. The plane landed in Turkey today with Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba, Defense Minister Umerov, head of the presidential office Yermak, and deputies Brusilo and Zhovkva. Whether they will participate in negotiations with Russia remains to be seen. However, it seems that Russia has no intention of meeting or negotiating. Meetings at this level might occur, but figures like Lavrov and Ushakov would show disdain for Ukraine and would not meet with our delegation. Putin's minions may meet at a technical level, but it's uncertain if Ukraine will agree. The Washington Post reports that the U.S. and Europe persuaded Zelenskyy to agree to talks with Russia in Istanbul. Two diplomats told the Washington Post that Zelenskyy was disappointed with the potential talks in Turkey and refused to allow a Ukrainian delegation to meet with Russia, seeing no point in the trip. Representatives of European countries and the United States have not publicly explained that it is important for Ukraine to at least send a delegation of high-ranking officials, including the head of the presidential office and the foreign minister, to Istanbul to show that Ukraine is ready for dialogue and wants to achieve a ceasefire. The ambassador, not President Witkoff, convinced Ukrainians that direct talks with Russia would benefit both sides, warning that if Ukraine participated but Russia did not, it would harm Moscow. If both sides are present, it could bring a ceasefire closer, two diplomats told the Washington Post. The Ukrainian official who spoke to the newspaper on condition of anonymity said Zelenskyy was still pushing for a meeting with Putin in Turkey. Why with him? Because a serious conversation about ending the killings and ending the war should take place with the person who ultimately makes the decisions in Russia, this official said. President Zelenskyy said earlier that he was scheduled to meet with Turkish President Erdogan in Ankara on Thursday. And this is really very important. Now let's mention this. According to the Wall Street Journal, Ukraine's representatives may meet with the Russian side in Istanbul only to discuss an unconditional 30-day ceasefire, as well as its implementation and monitoring. The Wall Street Journal reports that senior U.S. officials are traveling to Istanbul, though it's unclear who they will meet or when. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, currently serving as National Security Advisor, will be in Istanbul on Friday. Witkoff will be in Istanbul on Friday, but not today. The publication also notes that Putin aims for Ukraine's surrender through these talks, seeking discussions similar to those in 2022. He believes that he is now defeating Ukraine, but the publication emphasizes that over the past 2 years, the Russians have captured only 1% of Ukraine's territory, suffering huge losses in personnel and equipment. Well, you know, this is not for you and me to say. This is for Trump to hear. But I think he hears. He's just playing his game with Putin. No matter how they convince me, I believe that there are contacts between them, and they are trying to put pressure on Ukraine together. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the United States is open to almost any mechanism to achieve peace in Ukraine. He said this before the start of an informal meeting of NATO ministers in Antalya today. We understand these words to mean that any mechanism means that the United States will offer Ukraine to cross red lines for us. We will never agree to this. There was already Paris on April 17th, London on April 23rd, where in particular Paris says that Witkoff showed an A4 sheet saying that the U.S. wants to recognize Crimea de jure in order to push through and legitimize the occupation, and to work with Russia. This will not suit any of us Ukrainians at all. These are red lines, period. The main thing, I think, is to try to agree on a 30-day ceasefire, because, by the way, our soldiers say they would like to take a break. There are losses, there are 200, 300, and yesterday I literally talked to them. And by the afternoon of May 15th, it became known, and this is confirmed by sources among the occupiers, their so-called media. They cite the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs as saying that the talks in Istanbul had been postponed to the afternoon on the initiative of the Turkish side. Why is this important? Because Zelenskyy and Erdogan are going to meet, and it is very important that, with Erdogan's support, it is announced that Russia has disrupted the negotiations. Because you know what kind of delegation has arrived and what you can talk or negotiate with them about. And we know that Erdogan has authority over Trump. They recently had a phone conversation, and it was clear from that conversation that Erdogan has his own position and influence on Trump. He can't speak of Erdogan the way he does about Ukraine. This is the 47th U.S. president. As of recording, Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov confirmed that Putin will not participate in the talks. He confirmed that Putin will not be present in Turkey today or tomorrow. That's the latest update. Subscribe, comment, and share.